Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge, congratulations. Judge Cheeks, I see you're quite a prolific writer, and you say I heard you answer Senator Durbin's question. You said you don't take a position in these articles?
I said,
welcome back, patriots, to the channel The Constitution Corner, where America's roots guide its future. If you believe in truth, integrity, and judges who are supposed to follow the Constitution, not twist it to fit their personal politics, then hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because what you're about to hear should concern every single American who cares about the future of our judicial system.
I said I tried not to take a position in most of my articles.
Well, you didn't succeed. In October 2020, you published an article entitled, "I Can't Breathe." You remember that article?
I do remember that article.
Okay. You were talking about Mr. George Floyd's tragic death. Here's what you said, quote, your words, not mine, quote, "What happened next after Mr. Floyd's death is nothing short of amazing. Mostly peaceful protest broke out almost immediately in Minneapolis, and the use of excessive force by police officers became the villain in a sea of protesters," end quote. Did I read that accurately?
That sounds correct, yes, Senator.
All right, and then in October of 2019, you wrote an article entitled "Raising Responsibility: A Concerned Parent's Perspective." You remember that?
I do remember that, yes.
Did you take a position in that article?
I recall my position being talking about how am I going to address issues with my children.
So you did take positions, unlike what you told Senator Durbin.
What I told Senator Durbin that I try not to take positions.
Okay. Well, I want to read you from your article. Quote, your words, not mine. "Needless to say, I have a guarded opinion about the police. How do I teach my sons to respect them and fear them at the same time? There can be no question that police officers have some of these same internal or external biases." Let me repeat that. There can be no question that police officers, not some, all police officers have some of these same internal or external biases described above. Do some of them view black males differently than others? I think so. Sounds like a position to me. Do some think black males are more dangerous than others? I think so. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you read that correctly.
All right, now, and then in May of 2019, you remember writing an article for a publication, the title of the article, the title of your article in which you say you didn't take a position was called "The Federal Dungeon Part 2, Court Proceedings." You remember that?
I do.
Okay. And you were talking about, it was then under President Trump, not President Biden. The Department of Justice then had a zero tolerance for illegal entry into the United States, because that, of course, is the law. And this is what you said about that. Quote, "Technically, the law was broken, but these particular defendants, poor, hungry, hardworking, and not dangerous, deserve a pass from prosecution." End quote. Saying that illegal immigration should not be criminalized is a position, is it not?
It is. What I'd like to add is that everything that I wrote while I was an advocate, not a sitting judge.
Oh, I see. That makes a difference. Did you mean it when you wrote it?
When I wrote it?
Did you mean it?
I meant it when I wrote it, because...
Okay, but you don't mean it now?
I do not mean it now.
So if you take off your advocate hat today, do you have your advocate hat on today?
I am no longer an advocate. I'm a sitting magistrate judge.
Okay, so you don't tell the truth when you're an advocate, but you do when you're not? Is it okay to lie if you're an advocate?
I don't follow the question.
I think it's pretty clear, and I think you follow it. You've taken a lot of radical positions, Judge, and you can't make this cat walk backwards. Now, you can't make this cat walk backwards. I have one question for our second judge here. Judge, you remember a couple years ago going on a broadcast called Visible Voices Podcast?
I do, Senator.
All right. Here's what you said. It was just a couple years ago. So we're not talking way back in law school or anything. We're talking about a couple years. You'd been on the bench how long? 8 years then?
I've been on the bench almost 10.
Yeah. Well, but when you said this in front of God and country, you'd been on the bench 8. You said it in January 31, 2022. Here's what you said, quote, "I think that COVID has brought a lot of these issues to bear, especially in the legal profession, where I tell a lot of people all the time, we, the people, never included people of color or women. When you have an institution that is set up by property-owning white men for 200 years or so, it wasn't geared towards thinking about what would be the best work schedule or how we could really incorporate women with children in this field. So it's been a challenge that COVID was exacerbated," end quote. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, Senator, you did.
And then you go on later in the podcast to call for quotas based on gender, don't you?
No, sir, I never
Yes, you
ever
do.
claimed
If the
anything
senator
about
will give
quotas.
me time, I'll read what you said. May I finish reading what you said? The witnesses denied believing in quotas based on gender, and I have the quote.
Senator, you may read the quote, and then she will give an opportunity to
Okay,
respond.
here's your quote, Judge. Your words, not mine. Quote, "I think recognizing implicit bias is really important." Me too. "But I'll be honest, I don't think that's enough. Because the truth of the matter is nobody is going to voluntarily give up their position in favor of women. Women have to demand it. Women have to be willing to require and hold people accountable, hold men who are in those positions accountable, and say, quote, why don't we have an equal number of supervising judges, close quote." You didn't tell me the truth, did you? You believe in quotas based on gender, don't you?
Senator, your time's expired. I'd let the witness respond.
Thank you. No, I have never advocated on behalf of quotas. I think it's undisputed
Well,
that at
what
the
was
time.
this?
Please.
I just read it.
I
continue
think
to
at the
respond.
time that the Constitution was written, there is no question that it did not include women, and it did not include people of color in the definition of we the people. We, as women and people of color, have only recently been able to be judges or jurors or politicians. But the systems that were created when I was excluded and when people of color were excluded continue. All I was commenting upon is that the diversity in the judiciary builds integrity in the system and public confidence in those institutions. I never mentioned anything about quota. Thank you.
Good try, Judge.
Senator Butler,
Good try. Good try.
Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As acting ranking member,
Don't let it go to your
I
head.
love the power. I didn't know what it felt like to be
It's an amazing
to
thing.
have. It is. It's better than sex. I don't know. Not really. This Senate stuff's quite an experience. I'm not going to ask for the prerogative to ask a second round of questions as you just did, but I did want to correct the record. The part where Judge Millo is calling for quotas based on gender was not a long time ago. It was in January of 2022. Is that correct, Judge?
I'm not certain on the exact date, but I trust you, Senator, if that sounds about right.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Today we're reacting to a recent Senate Judiciary hearing where Senator John Kennedy, a true patriot and fearless defender of the Constitution, confronted two of President Biden's judicial nominees, Judge Cheeks and Judge Millo. And let me tell you, it was absolutely stunning. Let's start with Judge Cheeks. This is someone who wants a lifetime appointment on the federal bench. Yet she's written article after article filled with radical anti-law enforcement, anti-immigration, anti-American ideology. And when Kennedy asked her about it, she danced around every single question. He asked if she remembered her 2020 article titled "I Can't Breathe," where she praised the George Floyd protests as mostly peaceful and blamed police officers as the villains. She tried to dodge. He read her words back to her. She admitted they were hers. Then Kennedy brought up another article where she said, again her own words, "There can be no question that police officers have some of these same internal or external biases. Not some officers, all." That's her worldview, folks. That law enforcement officers as a group are biased against black males. That's not neutrality. That's activism. Kennedy asked her if she still stood by those views. Her answer? "I wrote that while I was an advocate." Oh, so it's okay to say inflammatory, politically charged things, as long as you're not wearing a robe yet? Sorry, that's not how it works. Then we moved to her 2019 article, "The Federal Dungeon," where she criticized immigration enforcement under President Trump and literally wrote that those who cross the border illegally deserve a pass from prosecution. Again, her words. That's not legal interpretation. That's open borders advocacy. Kennedy asked, "Did you mean it?" She said yes. Then when pressed further, she said no. So which is it? When do we get the real Judge Cheeks, on the page or in the courtroom? And then we had Judge Millo. In 2022, not 20 years ago, 2022, she went on a podcast and said this, and I quote, "We the people never included people of color or women." She went on to say that America's legal institutions were created by property-owning white men and weren't designed to accommodate women and minorities. Now listen, there's nothing wrong with talking about history. But there is a huge problem when someone who has already been a judge for 8 years makes sweeping generalizations that sound more like an activist's TED Talk than a jurist's reasoned commentary. Then it got worse. Kennedy asked her about a separate comment on that same podcast where she called on women to demand positions of power and hold men accountable until we have equal numbers of supervising judges. That, my friends, is a call for gender quotas. Plain and simple. She denied it. Said she never called for quotas. Kennedy read her own words back to her again. And this is the issue. We are watching a systematic attempt by the Biden administration to reshape the judiciary not into a neutral branch that interprets law, but into a political tool that enforces progressive ideology. You have one nominee who believes all cops are biased, illegal aliens deserve a pass, and that her past writings shouldn't count. You have another nominee who thinks, "We the people" doesn't apply to women or people of color and calls for gender-based restructuring of the judiciary. And these are supposed to be fair, impartial judges? Let me tell you something. This isn't justice. This is social engineering. Our judiciary must be rooted in impartiality, not ideology. In law, not activism. And if we let these kinds of nominees fill our courts, we won't have a legal system based on rights. We'll have a political weapon used to push cultural revolution from the bench. So what can you do? Share this video. Call your senators. Demand they vote no on radical nominees who can't even admit to their own words. Drop a comment and tell us what you think about these hearings. And don't forget to subscribe. We're going to keep holding this government accountable, one truth bomb at a time. This is the Constitution Corner, and we stand for law, order, and the truth. Until next time, stand strong, speak truth, and may God bless the United States of America.